Parshat Vayera, 5,722. We are in the Parsha of Vayera, the continuing saga of the Exodus from Egypt, specifically the plagues and how they're brought upon the Egyptians. If you look carefully, pasuk by pasuk, verse by verse, you'll see that it's not until the sixth plague that the Torah actually states, "Vechazek Hashem et lev paro," that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. If God didn't harden Pharaoh's heart until the sixth plague, what was the cause of Pharaoh hardening his heart for the first five plagues? And the answer is that no logic or reason could ever persuade Pharaoh to give up and to let the Jewish people go. The first five plagues, who hardened Pharaoh's heart? The answer is, he hardened his own heart because of his great hatred for the people of Israel. His hatred of the people of Israel was greater than his love for his own people. The reason why I think this is such an important concept is that I've been looking at the numbers this week of the number of Arabs and Muslims murdered in just this past year. For example, are you aware that close to 7,000 people have been massacred in Syria since March? I was looking at additional numbers, and did you know that Turkey has killed over 40,000 of its own Turkish citizens since 1984? And not just innocent Kurds, but other members of their community? 40,000. Are you aware that in Algeria, there was a civil war from 1991 to 2006, and in Algeria, they killed 200,000 of their own people? This is nothing new. In fact, Saddam Hussein is known as the Butcher of Baghdad because he killed 300,000 of his own people. But that's nothing new. In fact, during the 8-year Iran-Iraq war from 1980 to 1988, 1 million casualties occurred. Last week I was reading the newspaper how 140 Muslims were killed by suicide bombers in Baghdad alone. An additional 200 were killed in Mosul in one day. That's 340 Arab and Muslims killed by their own community, by their own friends and family members. It never ends. But what I don't understand is if you ask in the Muslim world, who is the number one enemy of Islam? They will answer, the great Satan, the United States, and little Satan, Israel. In the Muslim world, we are their greatest enemy. It's obvious and correct. In fact, this past week, Yoram Ettinger, who's the retired ambassador of Israel, wrote an amazing article in which he documented that since 1948, since the establishment of the State of Israel, nearly 11 million Arabs have been killed by Arabs and by Muslims. 11 million Arabs and Muslims killed by their own people. If you take in consideration, we'll take the number that the Arab world uses, 35,000 Arabs have died in conflict with Israel. So if you do that math, that means 99.7% of all Arab fatalities since 1948 were Arabs killed by their own people. 99.7%. This is like Pharaoh. They're hardening their own hearts. Death and destruction of their own community because their hatred for Israel is greater than their love for their own people. Are you familiar with the Midrash, the legend that says, Vayal Hatzvardeya? It explains why the text says, and the frog rose out of the Nile. The rabbis explain it was one large frog. And every time the Egyptians hit it, it would break up into more frogs. And that's how the plague increased throughout the land of Egypt, because the Egyptians continuously hit the frogs until they multiplied to an extent that was unbearable. It's like, jokingly, Frogzilla. Well, let me tell you something. I may not be the smartest guy, but if every time I hit a frog it made more frogs, I would send a message to all of my community, stop hitting the frog. You know what Einstein said? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. They should see that hitting the frog was actually bringing them great detriment, pain, and suffering. Problem is that their hatred was greater than their love. We live in a generation now in the Arab world where there's no empathy for others. There's no empathy for their own kind. This past week, and maybe even 2 weeks, there's been difficulty in the land of Israel. Issues of confrontation about modesty on Israeli buses, and a child, an 8-year-old girl, was spit upon. There's a lot of anti-religious fervor, and we only hear the negative things. However, this past week, being the recipient of a number of emails from the ultra-Orthodox community, I'd like to share with you an email that the ultra-Orthodox community is sending to themselves about what's going on and how they should react in the land of Israel. Rabbi Shach, who was the great leader of the ultra-Orthodox Jews of Israel, was celebrating Shabbat, the first Shabbat of the Scuds falling in Israel in 1991. And the amazing thing is that there are two communities right next door to each other. One is called Bnei Brak, where the ultra-Orthodox live, and the other one is Ramat Gan, which is a very wealthy, very affluent, but very secular community. That first Friday night, when the Scuds started falling, the Scuds fell only on Ramat Gan, and none of them came near Bnei Brak. Shabbat afternoon, one of the relatives of Rav Shach turned to him and said, "You see, Rebbe, the prophecy from this week's Torah portion came true, that the plagues didn't affect Goshen because the real Jews live there. Only Egypt, where the idolaters were afflicted by the plague. And that's why the Scuds only fell on Ramat Gan and not on Bnei Brak. It's fulfillment of the pasuk, V'ifleiti et eretz Goshen levilti hayot sham arov." Rav Shach was very angry and he responded, "I see it differently. It's the Torah observant Jew's job to study Torah. And by studying Torah, we protect our fellow Jews. Like Jonah and the whale, when the sea and the storm started nearly to destroy them, Jonah jumped up and said, 'The storm is because of me, not because of you.' Not because of the idolaters. He said, 'You know why there's a storm about us? Because I, the religious Jew, the observant Jew, the pious one, I didn't do my job. I didn't do enough.'" Rav Shach turned to his relative and said, "If Jews are being attacked in Ramat Gan, it's because Jews in Bnei Brak aren't doing enough to stop it." Stories like this are a statement about what Judaism is really about. You see, in human nature, we have egos, we have anger, and people feel insulted. But we cannot harden our hearts against anyone, especially our own, and even against our enemies. Because hate destroys. Hate burns. No one benefits when there's so much hatred in the world. But love and forgiveness, that's how building families become a reality. That's how we're going to build communities. And that's how we built a homeland. Not out of hate of our enemies, but our love for our fellow Jew and love for our fellow human beings. Because we have to stop hitting those frogs. That's insanity. Today, we can make a statement that we're going to change the world by changing ourselves and stop doing things based on hatred and animosity and antagonisms. We have to start feeling the pain of others. We have to work to make sure that their lives are better. Because truly then, like Rabbi Shach said, if other people are suffering in the world, if other people are in pain and suffering, it's probably because we're not doing everything that we can. And when we do, when we reach out and lift up the pain and sorrow of the world to light and healing, truly then we become a blessing for all humanity. Amen.